Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare.
So I had to collect the lawnmower as evidence. And that is the story of how I ended up with a demon killing a lawnmower. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Anyone, what are some stories you have wanted to tell people but haven't had the right AskReddit question to answer?
Number 1.
Years ago my family had 2 cats. Susie would terrorize Guy all day, every day. She'd stalk and attack him, and his whole life ended up consisting of hiding. We almost never saw him. So the vet put Susie on Prozac. Though it didn't seem to affect her, it came in handy when I ran out of Prozac one month and borrowed some of hers. A few months later, the vet put Guy on some sort of stimulant in hopes that it would prompt him to stand up for himself. Again, no noticeable effects. About a year later an envelope arrived in our mailbox addressed to Guy, our last name. Clearly assuming that Guy was a human, the letter, which was sent by a large legal firm, explained that the manufacturer of the medication Guy had been prescribed was the subject of a class action lawsuit due to price manipulation, and asked if Guy would like to join the suit. We replied in the affirmative, then forgot all about it. About another year later Guy received a check for around $150 for his legal victory. Mom used the money to buy him toys and treats. TLDR, my cat won a class action suit against a pharma company. P.S. I just spoke to Mom. She reminded me that, shortly before Guy got involved in the legal system, he received a federal tax refund. It wasn't for much, we think it was 75 cents, but that cat knew how to generate revenue.
Number 2.
My science teacher in 8th grade was talking to us about evolution and bed bugs, and how bed bugs evolved to become resistant to bug spray and whatnot. Then he whips a petri dish from behind his back with live bed bugs in it and proceeds to tell us we cannot under any circumstances tell the principal about this, because he'd get fired. Next thing you know, he sneezes really hard and drops the effing petri dish. The bed bugs go everywhere, sliding across the floor. Then after we'd all finished screaming and freaking out, that little F proceeds to tell us that they're not bed bugs. They're sunflower seeds.
Number 3.
Well, over a decade ago, before I could drive, I was in the car with my grandma at a red light. Across the street was a Jack in the Box and I could see the parking lot. A sedan drives up, like a late 90s Toyota Corolla, and stops. A man in a white gown, like a baptismal gown, gets out and goes to the trunk. He opens it and another man in the same gown gets out. They switch spots. The man that was in the trunk goes and sits in the driver's seat, then the light turns green and we drive off.
Number 4.
My friend and I were in welding class, and I filled up a small trash bag with oxy/acetylene mix when he wasn't looking and set it off behind him. Big bang, big laugh. Haha. Yeah, well, apparently I shouldn't have shown this to my friend because the next day this effing idiot friend of mine found a small crack/hole about the size of a quarter in the cinder block wall in our class, stuck his unlit torch in there and just pumped gas wide open inside. After a while, he gets my attention, goes watch this, pulls his striker from his pocket and lights it right next to the hole in the wall. F-I-N-G boom. This kid blew a 5-foot hole clean into the other classroom.
Number 5.
My friend Ben rode to and from high school with me every day. Every day, like clockwork, we saw the same guy drive past us on the same road. He drove an old Chevy truck, probably an 80s model with a single cab. He always had his dog, this German Shepherd, who would be sitting in the passenger seat. One day, coming home from school, we passed the guy, but when I looked, the dog was in the driver's seat, and the guy was riding shotgun. I turned to Ben and he immediately said, "Yeah, what the F? You saw that too? Imagination? Brain fart? Ike." But I swear I saw that dog driving.
Number 6.
I was chasing someone that stole from the bottle shop, liquor store, I was working at. She was probably about 16 years old. As I chased her I was just about to catch her when she ran out into the road and got wiped out by a car. I kinda felt bad as I picked up the can she dropped on the floor as she limped away. Ended up getting a phone call from the police asking if we had been robbed. I asked how he knew and he said someone called up claiming they had run over someone fleeing the store.
Number 7.
I have a demon killing a lawnmower. A while back I helped investigate a fire scene. The fire was pretty much confined to the basement, but the whole basement was damaged. Going through the debris, we found a lawnmower in the basement, which is very unusual. But in the lawnmower blades we found chunks of carpet and wood, which is even weirder. And then just to add fuel to the fire, parts of the carpet and furniture in the basement looked like they'd been attacked with a lawnmower. The owner of the house had been arrested but we didn't know why. It turns out the guy had been on a 3-day meth binge. He began to hallucinate heavily. He claimed demons were attacking him in his house. He somehow figured out they were coming from the basement, so he went down and started fighting them. He realized there were too many, so he went up to his garage and got the lawnmower and started mowing the demons as they came out of the basement floor. The demons, overpowered him and stopped his lawnmower from moving. So he took the gas cap off and dumped the tank out and lit the whole basement on fire in an attempt to kill the demons. So I had to collect the lawnmower as evidence. And that is the story of how I ended up with a demon killing a lawnmower.
Number 8.
Commenter. My mother and her best friend, S, lost contact for about 10 years. One morning, unannounced, S showed up at her door. My mother was thrilled. They sat and had coffee, chatted for a couple hours. After a while S said, "Don't you want to ask me something?" My mother was surprised and said, "No. You look great." S said, "Yes, I'm well." Mom said, "I like your new haircut." S said, "Yes. I shaved my head." My mother nodded, confused. S said, "And I'm wearing sandals. And saffron. I'm a Buddhist nun?" My mother had not noticed. Person B. I made a new friend in high school. She introduced me to her mother and father, and I got along great with her dad. He taught me to play a difficult card game, and we spent hours playing together. One day another friend of ours mentioned how badly disfigured he was from the accident, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" I had never noticed the man was scarred and burned over his entire body and missing fingers as he had been in an explosion while working on a ship. Person C. This was me with my cousin. He was caught in a fire and has no hair, well patches, no fingers, no ears or tear ducts. A lot of issues when he was younger. Well, I'm 3 years younger and was not born yet, so this is how I've always seen him. It's totally unsurprising to me and it never shocked me in the slightest. He also can beat me in darts. Neither I nor he knows how he holds the darts without proper fingers.
Number 9.
One time I was at the store, buying party supplies for a Christmas Eve party. You can imagine the store was packed because it was Christmas time. I hate crowded stores. One thing I had to get for my mom was a pack of ginger ale cans. I went to the self-checkout and the sticker for the pack of cans was on the top of the pack. I awkwardly rolled the pack over on the scanner to scan the barcode and a single can fell out onto the floor of the store. As it hit the ground, a tiny hole busted open between the body of the can and the seam of the top of the can. A small pressurized stream of ginger ale was projecting out of the can as it began to roll away. Like a ginger ale sprinkler, it rolled down the alley of self-checkouts, misting all the Christmas Eve shoppers with ginger ale as the clerk had to chase it down the queue of people waiting to check out. It was quite embarrassing.
Number 10.
I was once forced to wear a wig in my ID photo for a secure access card. It was my first year of grad school, and the lab I was rotating in was located in a building owned not by my university, but by a large company that I don't work for. To get to the lab, I needed a company access card for the elevator, which meant I had to have an ID photo taken. So I jumped through all the hoops to get approved for the card and trekked down to the basement they're taking photos in, where I'm informed that they can't take my photo because I'm not in company employee dress code. Their employee's hair is required to be a natural color, and mine is blue. I explained that I'm not a company employee and that my university doesn't require grad students to adhere to a dress code. The company photographer explains that their policy says they can't take a photo for a company ID card unless I'm in company employee dress code, and it has no exceptions for the extremely common scenario of grad students needing access to this particular building. I'm obviously not going to dye my hair for one photo, so I have to find another solution. I go to my department head and ask him if he can intercede on my behalf. He is not sympathetic. He is not a fan of the hair. I ask company if I can use an old photo from before I dyed my hair. They say yes, but it can't be more than 3 years old and it has to be on a white or gray background. I own exactly one photo fitting that description. They reject it because the resolution is too low. So I ask them if I can just wear a wig. To my disbelief, they say yes. They have no compunctions about me wearing a disguise in a photo whose sole purpose is to identify me, as long as the wig is a natural color. I return to the photo basement in a shiny waist-length brunette costume wig. They take the photo without hesitation, it looks nothing like me, and print it on the ID card, which I've kept ever since because I don't think anyone would believe me otherwise. Edited to clarify what color my hair was.
Number 11.
When I was in high school I threw a party and a friend drunkenly put a hole in the wall right by the entrance. My parents would be back in a little over 24 hours. The day following the party I went to Home Depot and explained to the guy working there my situation. To which he basically told me, yeah dude, you don't have enough time to fix a hole in the wall after getting all the supplies. I figured I was good to go out with some friends for a while, come home and quickly fix the wall. I come home from being out around 10 p.m., giving me about 12 hours before my parents would come home. I fill up the hole with the mesh and sheetrock. Now it's all filled up and smooth, still wet and obviously a different color than the wall itself. I remembered that my mom painted the wall herself a few years back and there are still paint cans left over in the basement. After grabbing a can that matched the color of the wall, I got ready to cover the spot. The second I painted onto the wall, I immediately noticed the paint color was too dark. It's the same color but a much darker shade, so my mom must have thought it was too dark and added white to lighten the color. So, I go back to the basement for white paint. I spend the next few hours trying to find the right shade that my mom used so once painted the wall would match in color with the surrounding walls. After an eternity I finally got the right color. It's 3 to 4 a.m. at this point and I paint the whole wall. Once I'm done, the wall looks great, you can't even tell there was ever a hole. My next obvious issue is the smell of paint. One step into the house and my parents would immediately know something isn't right, it reeks of paint. That's when I remembered seeing a can of blue paint in the basement. I grabbed the blue paint and a poster board used from a school project and make a sign saying welcome home. I then hang the sign in the same room as the wet wall, on an opposite wall to draw attention there and off the painted wall. I purposely leave the can of blue paint there on the floor with the lid off to help sell the reason for the strong smell of paint. Then I went to bed, exhausted and with only a few hours to spare. I woke up when they arrived to greet them / see if I was gonna get busted or not. My plan worked like a charm. I got away with it. They love the welcome home sign. I know what you must be wondering, but what about the wet paint? There's no way it dried in time. You're right, it was 100% still wet when they arrived. I just prayed nobody would touch the wall. That's one of my stories I'm actually very proud of. That was over 10 years ago and I'm still just as proud today of that accomplishment as I was back then. Edit, for those assuming my parents knew but went along with it. There's a 0% chance of that. My parents were insanely strict, my dad especially. In fact, a few weeks before, I had already got in trouble for having people over and the neighbors ended up calling my parents to complain about the noise. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.